A bright, ambitious African girl moves to Seoul chasing her dreams, only to collide, literally, with the mysterious, cold billionaire who lives next door. Their worlds clash in laughter, late-night snowstorms, and secret acts of kindness, pulling them closer despite cultural divides and family pressures. But when love begins to bloom, will their hearts survive the expectations and secrets that threaten to tear them apart? Sit back and enjoy. It was a chilly evening in Seoul. The streetlights glowed like tiny stars, and Linda pulled her scarf tighter around her neck. She had just returned from her part-time job at the cafe and was carrying a heavy bag of groceries. Her arms ached, and the wind made her fingers numb. She hurried down the hallway of her apartment building, humming an African song softly to herself. Then it happened. She turned the corner and bam! Her bag slipped from her hand, and apples rolled across the floor. Standing in front of her was a tall man in a black coat. His hair was neat, his shoes shined, and his expression was as cold as the winter air. "Watch where you're going," he said in a deep, calm voice. Sorry, Linda stammered, bending to pick up her apples. To her surprise, he crouched down too. "Here," he said, placing a bruised apple back in the bag. His hands were warm, but his eyes remained distant. She mumbled thanks, but before she could say more, he nodded politely and walked away to the apartment next door. Later, as she closed her door, she noticed something. The man's apartment was always quiet. No TV sounds. No music. Not even footsteps. She often heard laughter and chatter from other neighbors, but never from him. A week passed. They exchanged brief hellos in the hallway, nothing more. But one Saturday evening, Linda's friends came over. They brought drums, spicy jollof rice, and the smell of grilled meat. The laughter grew loud, the music lively. Everyone danced barefoot in her small living room. Suddenly, knock, knock, knock. Linda opened the door to find her neighbor. His face was calm, but his voice carried a hint of irritation. "It's too loud," he said simply. She folded her arms. "We're just having fun." His eyebrow twitched. "Some people like quiet." That was the start of it, the neighbor feud that would change everything. Because that night, as she went to bed still smiling at his annoyed face, she had no idea that the cold man next door was one of the richest men in Korea, and that soon, their worlds would collide in ways neither of them could escape. The next morning, Linda left her apartment early. She had 2 jobs that day, cleaning in the morning and waitressing in the evening. As she stepped out, she saw him again, dressed in a gray suit this time. He was locking his door. They exchanged quick glances. "You look awake," she said awkwardly. He gave a tiny nod. "Work." She didn't know why she asked, but she blurted out, "What do you do?" He hesitated. "Business." And just like that, he walked past her without another word. Linda shook her head. Business could mean anything. Her curiosity grew over the next few days. He came home late every night. Expensive cars sometimes stopped in front of the building, and well-dressed men bowed to him before he disappeared inside. One afternoon, while she was helping Mrs. Park, the elderly neighbor down the hall, carry a heavy box, she noticed him watching quietly from his doorway. His eyes softened for a moment, but when she looked up, he quickly shut his door. That weekend, Linda invited a few neighbors over again. She was careful to keep the music lower this time, but as the evening went on, the laughter grew. At one point, she laughed so hard she almost fell off her chair. The sound echoed through the hall. Minutes later, there was another knock. She sighed and opened the door. This time, he didn't look angry. He just said, "You laugh loudly." "And you notice?" she teased. He didn't answer. He just handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" "Your mail." It was in my box. Then, without waiting for thanks, he left. When she opened the envelope, it wasn't mail at all. It was a flyer for a charity event in the city, with his name printed boldly at the bottom as the main sponsor. Linda stared at it, her heart racing. Her cold neighbor was not just business. He was a man with secrets, and she suddenly wanted to know all of them. The next time Linda saw him was 2 days later. It was raining in Seoul, the kind of rain that made the streets shine like black glass. She had forgotten her umbrella, so she ran into the building, soaked from head to toe. As she reached her door, she noticed him unlocking his. He paused, glanced at her dripping clothes, and said, "You'll catch a cold." Linda chuckled. "I'll be fine. In Africa, we dance in the rain." Something flickered in his eyes, a small hint of curiosity, before he disappeared inside. She went to bed thinking about that. Why did it feel like he was always hiding something behind that calm face? The following Saturday, Linda decided to go to the charity event she saw on the flyer. She didn't tell him, of course. She wore her best dress, a bright yellow one that reminded her of home, and took the train to the Grand Hotel where the event was being held. The moment she stepped inside, she felt out of place. Everyone was in suits and elegant gowns, speaking in soft, polite voices. The chandeliers sparkled above, and waiters moved silently with trays of champagne. And then she saw him. He stood at the center of the room, shaking hands with important-looking people. His black suit fit perfectly, and his smile, a real smile, appeared when he greeted the guests. For a moment, Linda almost didn't recognize him. This wasn't the quiet man from next door. This was someone powerful, someone used to commanding attention. She was about to leave when his eyes found hers. He froze for half a second, then started walking toward her. "Linda?" His voice was calm, but there was surprise in it. I came to see the event," she said, suddenly nervous. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You shouldn't be here alone. Come." And just like that, she found herself walking beside the mysterious billionaire, stepping deeper into a world she had never imagined, a world that might change her life forever. Linda followed him through the glittering hall. People turned their heads as they passed, whispering to each other. She could feel eyes on her yellow dress, on her braids, on her hand that brushed against his suit sleeve. He stopped at a quiet corner, away from the main crowd. "Why are you here alone?" "You left the building before me," he said softly. "I saw the flyer, and besides, you gave it to me," she said honestly. "I wanted to see what you do, and maybe understand you better." His expression was unreadable. This world isn't as pretty as it looks. Before she could reply, an older man in a dark suit approached. His eyes flicked over Linda quickly, and his mouth tightened. "June, we need to speak." "Now." June, she finally knew his name, gave a short nod. "I'll be there." He turned to Linda. "Stay here. I'll be back." Linda watched him walk away, his tall frame disappearing into a group of powerful men. She tried to blend in, sipping water from a crystal glass, but she could feel the stares. Just then, a kind-faced woman about her age approached. "You're not from here, are you?" she asked in a gentle voice. "No," Linda smiled. "I'm from Nigeria." The woman nodded. "I'm Yumi. You must be very special for him to bring you here. He doesn't usually let people in." Linda's heart skipped. "We're just neighbors." Yumi's smile widened, like she knew something Linda didn't. "Neighbors, HM? Well, just be careful. His family can be complicated." Before Linda could ask more, June returned. His face was calm, but his eyes looked slightly troubled. "I'll take you home," he said. It wasn't a question. As they rode in his sleek black car, neither spoke for a while. The city lights flashed past, painting his face in gold and shadow. "Finally," he said, "people will talk. I hope you don't mind." Linda looked out the window. "Let them talk. I'm not afraid of people." He glanced at her, and for the first time, she thought she saw the corner of his mouth lift, almost like he was trying not to smile. She didn't know it yet, but that night had planted a seed. And seeds have a way of growing, even in the coldest soil. The next morning, Linda woke up earlier than usual. Her mind kept replaying the night before, the glittering hotel, the whispers, and the way June had looked at her in the car. When she stepped into the hallway, she was surprised to see a small box outside her door. Inside was an umbrella, black, sleek, expensive-looking, with a tiny note, "For rainy days." She didn't need to guess who it was from. Later that day, while working at the cafe, Linda spotted June outside, standing near a sleek silver car. He wasn't alone. A beautiful woman in a cream coat stood beside him, speaking in quick, sharp Korean. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, and they seemed familiar. Linda's stomach tightened. though she didn't know why. She served another customer, but when she looked again, they were gone. That evening, June came home late. Linda was outside watering the small potted plants she kept by her door. "You didn't have to get me an umbrella," she said as he passed. "It rains often here," he replied simply. Then, after a pause, "Did you like the event?" "It was different," she said. "Not my kind of party, but I liked seeing you smile." His eyes met hers for a second before he looked away. "I don't smile much." "I noticed," she teased. "Maybe I should teach you." For the first time, he gave a quiet chuckle, short but real. But before the warmth could grow, his phone rang. His expression hardened as he answered in Korean. The conversation was quick, tense. When he hung up, his voice was colder again. "I have to go," he said. Linda watched him walk away, a strange heaviness in her chest. She didn't know it yet, but that phone call was the first sign of trouble, the kind that would soon drag both their lives into stormy waters. The next few days were quiet between them. Linda focused on her jobs, and June kept his usual distance. But she began to notice small things. Sometimes, when she passed him in the hallway, his eyes would linger just a moment too long. Sometimes she'd find little gestures, a bag of fresh tangerines left at her door, or the elevator held open when he saw her coming. One cold evening, Linda returned home shivering. She had been working at the restaurant all day, and the heaters there had broken. As she struggled to fit her key in the lock, she heard a voice behind her. "You're freezing." She turned to see June, holding a paper bag. He handed it to her without explanation. Inside was steaming hot ginseng soup. "Eat it while it's warm," he said before turning toward his door. "Wait," she called after him. "Why are you so nice all of a sudden?" He stopped, but didn't turn around. "I'm not nice. I just don't like seeing people sick." Linda smiled to herself as she carried the soup inside. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She didn't want to admit it, but there was something about June that pulled her in, the way he was guarded, yet quietly caring. A few days later, it snowed for the first time that winter. Linda was outside, her laughter echoing through the courtyard as she tried to catch snowflakes on her tongue. From his balcony above, June watched. He told himself he was only looking because of the noise. But then she looked up and spotted him. "Come down," she called. "I don't play in the snow," he replied. "Then learn," she shouted, tossing a small snowball toward his balcony. It didn't reach, but it made him laugh, a real, warm laugh she could hear even from below. Something shifted in that moment. Neither of them could name it yet, but they both felt it, the quiet beginning of something that could no longer be ignored. The snow kept falling for days. Seoul became a blanket of white, and the streets were quieter than usual. Linda loved it, the way the city looked softer, like a scene from a fairy tale. One evening, she was struggling with a stack of letters in Korean. They were important, some about her visa, others about taxes, but she couldn't understand all the words. She sat on her floor, biting her lip in frustration. There was a knock. When she opened the door, June stood there with his usual calm face. "You left your balcony light on," he said. She replied, then hesitated. "Do you know much about paperwork?" "In Korean." He raised an eyebrow. "I was born here." 5 minutes later, he was sitting on her couch, coat neatly folded beside him, translating each letter. His voice was steady, his handwriting neat as he wrote little notes for her to understand. "Thank you," she said softly. "This would have taken me days." He shrugged. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing to her. Nobody in Seoul had ever helped her like this before. When they finished, she disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a steaming bowl of spicy agusi soup. "Now you try something from my world," she said with a playful smile. He looked doubtful at first, but after the first spoonful, his eyes widened. "This is good." "Good," she laughed. "That's all you can say?" "It's very good," he admitted, and she noticed the faintest smile tug at his lips. That night, they ended up talking for hours about their childhoods, about music, about how he hated noisy parties, but secretly liked the smell of street food. Linda found herself leaning closer without realizing it, drawn in by the warmth behind his guarded eyes. And when he finally stood to leave, there was a moment, just a moment, where it felt like he might reach for her hand. But instead, he simply said, "Good night, Linda," his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. A week later, Linda came home later than usual. She had been helping a friend set up a small pop-up food stall, and they'd worked until almost midnight. As she walked toward the apartment building, she noticed a figure standing near the entrance. It was June. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, surprised. "You weren't home," he said simply. "It's late." Linda blinked. "Were you waiting for me?" He didn't answer, but the slight shift in his posture was enough to tell her yes. Inside the hallway, she smiled at him. "You know, you're starting to sound like you care." His gaze held hers for a long moment. "What if I do?" Her heart skipped. The words were quiet, but they landed heavily between them. Then, she began, but her voice faltered. She looked down at her hands, suddenly shy. "Then maybe. I care too." The silence stretched. She felt his eyes on her, warm and intense. "Linda," he said softly, "I've spent most of my life keeping people at a distance. It's easier that way. But with you, He stopped, searching for the right words. "I find myself wanting to be near you, even when I shouldn't." Her chest tightened. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you should stop thinking about what you shouldn't, and think about what you want." His jaw tightened like he was holding something back. Then slowly he said, "I want you to stay in my life, no matter what my world looks like." They stood there, the air between them electric, both knowing something had shifted for good. It wasn't a grand, dramatic confession, not yet, but it was real, and it was enough to make her smile all the way to her door. And though they didn't touch, both of them felt it, the invisible thread pulling them closer, stronger than before. 2 nights later, Seoul was swept by a heavy snowstorm. The streets outside were quiet, and the wind howled against the apartment windows. Linda was curled up on her couch with a blanket when the power went out. The sudden darkness made her gasp. The heater went silent, and the room quickly grew cold. She lit a small candle from her kitchen, but the flickering light only made the shadows dance. Then came the knock. When she opened the door, June stood there, holding a flashlight. "Power's out for the whole block," he said. "Come to my place. It's warmer." She hesitated for a moment, not because she didn't want to, but because stepping into his space felt like crossing a line. Still, she followed him. His apartment was warm, the faint scent of cedar in the air. The windows framed the city covered in snow, and a few battery-powered lamps cast a soft glow. "Sit," he said, handing her a mug of hot tea. She sat on the couch, watching him move around the kitchen in a simple white nightwear instead of his usual sharp suits. "It's strange," she murmured. "You look normal tonight." He smirked faintly. "Normal? I mean, less like the man everyone whispers about, and more like—" She stopped, cheeks warming. "More like," he pressed. "More like the man who brings me soup and tangerines," she said quietly. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he sat beside her, his eyes searching hers. "Linda, I'm not good at saying how I feel. But the truth is, I think about you more than I should. I notice when you're happy, when you're tired. And when you're not home late at night, I worry." Her heart thudded in her chest. She took a breath. "Then stop worrying about what's right or wrong and just let it happen." His hand twitched slightly on the couch, as if he wanted to reach for hers. "You don't know what being close to me means. My life is complicated." "I'm not afraid of complicated," she whispered. For the first time, his walls seemed to lower completely. His voice was almost a breath. "Then maybe. I don't have to keep my distance anymore." They sat there, snow falling silently outside, the air between them warm and charged, the start of something neither could turn away from. Weeks passed, and the closeness between Linda and June grew. They shared more meals, more quiet moments, and more conversations that stretched deep into the night. But there was always one shadow over them, his family. Linda had never met them, but she had heard enough whispers from Yumi and the neighbors to know they were powerful, traditional, and strict about who June should marry. One evening, June knocked on her door. He looked serious, but not in a cold way. "Come with me tomorrow," he said. "Where?" she asked cautiously. "To meet my family." Her heart jumped. Are you sure? I'm done hiding, he said simply. The next day, they drove to a sprawling estate just outside the city. The gates opened silently, revealing manicured gardens and a house that looked like it had been pulled from a history book. Inside, they were greeted by an older woman in a deep blue hanbok, his mother. Her gaze swept over Linda, calm but unreadable. Linda bowed politely. It's an honor to meet you. For a moment, the silence stretched. Then, to Linda's surprise, June's mother smiled gently. So you're Linda. My son speaks of you often. Linda's eyes widened. He does. June shifted uncomfortably, but didn't deny it. They sat for tea, and the conversation flowed more easily than Linda had imagined. His mother asked about her work, her life in Seoul, and even her favorite foods from home. When tea was finished, his father, a tall, stern man, entered the room. Linda braced herself. But instead of the cold dismissal she feared, he simply said, "My son looks happier than I've seen him in years." That is enough for me. Linda felt her throat tighten. She glanced at June, who gave her a small, reassuring nod. As they left the estate, she exhaled in relief. I thought they'd hate me. I told you, June said quietly, taking her hand for the first time in public. You've changed my life. They can see that. And in that moment, walking through the winter air with his fingers wrapped around hers, she realized she hadn't just found love in a foreign city. She had found a home. And that was the beginning of peace. Please drop your thoughts in the comment section. That was another tale from Folktales by Blizzy, where stories leave forever. If it made you smile, feel, or think, please like, share, and subscribe.